Dave and Ashley, thanks for being the first guests on the Made Alive podcast. We're excited to have you all here. So to kick us off, can you just give us a little bit of an introduction about who you guys are and how specifically you got involved in marriage ministry?
First guess. I mean, that's an honor. Like,
it is an honor. We're excited.
Send us a certificate or something. Because I would put it.
We're gonna put it right here.
Right here.
Yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
We're gonna have posters. It's gonna be great.
I love it.
Autograph it for us too.
Oh my goodness, I love it. No, we are so honored, and we are longtime friends of Nirup and LifeGate, and so we're thrilled to be on this podcast. But so we're Dave and Ashley Willis, and we've been doing marriage ministry for about 11 years or so now, and we're part of the team at XO Marriage, and we love doing it together. We got into it really through Dave being a pastor for many years, and he said like one day he came home and after doing a pastoral counseling with yet another couple in the church struggling in their marriage. And he was talking with me and he was like, social media, like at the time it was like, the early 2000s and I guess mid 2000s and Facebook was just blowing up. And he was like, somebody really needs to do something on Facebook to reach these people, in their marriages who are struggling with just like really sound marriage advice that's based on the Bible. And he's like, somebody should do that. And he said like in that moment, he felt like God was kind of tapping him on the shoulder saying, well, you're somebody and it's your budget, which is $0. It's free. And so we started the marriage page. Literally, it's called Marriage. If you go to Facebook today, it's Facebook.com/Stronger Marriages. And it was anonymous for at least a year. Right. And it was just one of the couples you married. It was like the back of them and like a beautiful picture of them getting married and just put out really sound biblical marriage advice. And eventually it really took off. And then both of us started blogging out of that. And then eventually did marriage events out of that. And eventually joined the team at XO Marriage. And we just love creating resources to help people in their marriages. And, I'm now a biblical counselor this May officially. And so we've been counseling, people with their marriages. And it's such a great need for pretty much everybody. I mean, we've been married 22 years and we have not had a perfect marriage. We've had our highs and lows too. And so we see ourselves as being in it with everybody. But we do believe that God, with God's help, we can have a wonderful marriage. And so we're excited to be part of that solution.
Yeah. So Ashley, you were teaching. Dave, you were a pastor.
Yes, that's
so
right.
You were kind of in that world, meeting people, counseling people, praying with people. But Ashley, you're kind of, other than your own marriage and maybe some friends, you're totally disconnected because you're a teacher. So what was that transition like for you, moving from teaching to teaching in a different avenue, really?
Well, honestly, I wasn't disconnected. I mean, Dave and I started out in youth ministry together. We've ministered together more so in our marriage than apart. But in that specific season, you're right, I was teaching middle school and Dave started the page kind of on his own. And I wasn't really actively posting on the page, but I knew just through going to church and doing ministry together, like what a need it was. And so for me, going into the marriage space, it wasn't that crazy of a transition because we've worked together so much. But the blogging, really what I started doing first was blogging, and I would do it during my break in teaching. Like when I would have my planning period, if I finished my planning, I would start my blogging. And then eventually we had our fourth boy, and I stayed at home with each of our kids. And during that time of being at home was kind of when it started really picking up more. And then, we started kind of, we're like, oh my gosh, God's called us to this. I guess we need to just see where this takes us. And it's been like little by little. There wasn't a big plan from our standpoint right from the beginning, but it's been great.
Yeah. God had a bigger plan with it than we did. We just wanted to help, and we didn't know what that was going to look like. We didn't have a vision for doing full-time marriage ministry, but the need was there, and God kind of just he started making it clearer and clearer that this is what we were called to do and gifted to do, and we're having a great time doing it.
Yeah, talk about the need for a second, because I would make the case that across any community, especially in America, single, married, whatever, and everything in between, that marriage is probably the number one most felt need. Mm-hmm. So how have you guys experienced that, the needs of people when it comes to marriages?
Yeah, I think that all of us have a desire, like a God-given desire for human connection. And God, from the very beginning of the story of humanity, he created us to to need to connect, first and foremost with him, in personal relationship with him, but then with each other. He said it's not good for man to be alone. That doesn't mean that a person can't spend their whole life single and be fully living out God's calling, as many of the heroes of the Bible did. But ultimately, he's telling us marriage is a gift, and society needs it. Family, it's the bedrock of families, of societies, of communities, of churches. And so it's the very thing that I think that the enemy would like to attack more than anything else, by creating division between husbands and wives, by infiltrating the culture and trying to convince people that marriage is an antiquated idea, not necessary anymore, by getting people to settle for cheap counterfeits of marriage through connecting through through sex outside of marriage, through pornography, through just anything other than the real deal. And so many folks just they long for that deep, committed connection within marriage, but they haven't really seen good examples of it. Maybe they didn't grow up in houses where that was modeled. They don't know where to start. And so a lot of what we do is just open up the Bible and say, guys, listen, like anybody can do this. Pastor Jimmy Evans, the founder of our ministry, says your marriage has a 100% chance of success if you do it God's way. It's not a coin toss. It's not 50-50. It's 100% if you do it God's way. And God's way, it really isn't as complicated as people make it. I mean, it takes work and intentionality for sure, but anybody can do it. And so we just try to encourage people in that.
Yeah, I love your guys' story, because it's so full of so many things: sickness, suffering, pornography, addiction, anxiety. So walk us through that walk us through a couple right now who's listening and they're saying, I thought it should be easier. I thought I'm supposed to find my soulmate. It's supposed to be way easier because, that's what the Notebook says, and that's what culture says. So what do you say to the couple that says, if God wanted this for me, shouldn't this be way easier?
Oh man, I think we both had that thought right out of the gate.
I think everybody kind of does. When you're standing there.
I don't know how you had that thought, Ashley, because Dave is like my role model. I think to myself, that must be the best guy to be married to. I'd be laughing all day. Not that I would marry you, Dave, but if I was in your house, I'd be laughing all day.
And I am. He keeps me laughing. Honestly, I feel like God and Dave making me laugh got us through a lot of hard times.
You need a lot of laughter for sure.
It's so true. Well, the reason I say that is, like, right out of the gate, we had in-law problems literally from the day we got married. And we probably had them before we got married, not even realizing what we were getting into, because we were so sidetracked with school. We were both in college at the time, and just kind of like excited about the wedding. And like, we went to our premarital classes and we were planning on the actual marriage too, and the relationship part. But I think we had forgotten about the family dynamics aspect of it. And literally from just the get-go, it was just so hard with some of our family relationships. And then in that, I actually went into a deep depression that I kind of didn't even realize I was in. It was kind of a very, one of those things where I was able to go to my job. I was able to put on a happy face and go through the motions, but really deep inside, I was just depressed and anxious a lot of the time, and waking up in the middle of the night feeling sick to my stomach due to anxiety attacks, and like I can't breathe and things like that. And so we had that to work through. And very quickly, thankfully, we realized that we can't do this on our own. And so we sought help from a counselor, a Christian counselor. And this counselor really tried to help us establish healthy boundaries with the family members that were overstepping. And then I eventually went to counseling on my own for my anxiety and depression for years, actually, off and on. Went to my doctor, got on an antidepressant in the short term to help my serotonin levels get up so the therapy could work. So there was a lot. And that's in the first 5 years. I mean, it was in-law problems, anxiety and depression. I discovered that Dave had a pornography addiction that he had never really told me about, that kind of surprised him, even that he fell back into that very quickly after we were married, and then dealing with the aftermath of that and him getting sober essentially and relapsing and then getting sober again. And then with the birth of our first child, Cooper, my anxiety and depression kind of hit its lowest point, and then just recovering from that. And, it's just, I know that's a lot, and a lot of people can relate to this, but it was like the first 5 years, we had so many great moments too. We were in the thick of youth ministry with dear friends and just literally at the church nearly every day and with youth every day. But then, at home and in our personal lives, there was just a lot going on. And we feel like God used it, and definitely it was boot camp for marriage during that time in marriage ministry. But we feel like we just have compassion for couples going through it, because we know at any point in your marriage, I mean, you can have hardship, and we just really want to encourage people not to give up.
Yeah, Dave, how did you handle that with your wife is going through something? Are you saying, hey, this is your issue. You got to fix it. You got to figure out what you need. Call me and let me know when it's all better.
Right. Well, I mean, we had some really wise mentors speak into our lives from early on and teach us some foundational principles. So we went in knowing like, okay, whatever we face, even though we were naive to think we were going to face stuff, we face stuff like everybody. Whatever we face, we're going to face it together, because in marriage, there's not his problems and her problems. It's always our problems, and we're going to face them together. And so we had that mindset. When she was going through the anxiety and depression, I didn't feel equipped to know what to say or how to help, but I knew that I could bring some comfort just by letting her know, I'm here for you. I'm not going anywhere. I love you. We're going to face it together. We're going to figure it out together. We're going to pray together, and you're not going to walk through this alone. And so when your spouse is going through something, I think that's where you got to start, is just, you're not going to go through this alone. When that pornography sin came out early on, I mean, that's a sin issue. Like anxiety and depression is not a sin issue. That's a sickness issue. But here I had created this issue, and I felt like, well, this is my problem 100%. I created this mess. Let me clean it up. But Ashley came alongside me, even though I had wounded her through this sin, and really said, no, this is our mess, and we're going to walk through this together. And it was my sin, but it was our issue now, because we're married, and she had the wisdom and grace to say, I want to walk with you through this. And then in the years since, whatever we face, whether it's, we've had a lot of, financial pressure through the years. We've moved cross country multiple times with small children, which trying to do that is just incredibly stressful. We've had health issues, both physical and mental, and we've had stuff. Now, I don't say that to say like we've had it harder than other people. I mean, everybody's got their stuff, and some people have certainly had it harder. But everybody is going through something. Every marriage will go through some stuff. Everyone, every marriage really is going through something right now, because we live in a broken world where there's always going to be some kind of issue, and you just have to decide it ahead of time that we're not going to lose faith. We're not going to throw in the towel. And if we'll stick together and let God work through us, then we're going to get through anything that this world can throw at us.
Yeah, I want to talk about in-laws in a second, because you guys write about so many things. It's so rich, it's so practical, it's so biblical. But it almost, as I'm listening to both of you talk, and I'm thinking to myself, did you come out of the womb this spiritually mature?
No.
Did it take years of like, I cannot believe he is going through this. Why can't this man just figure it out? Or, how did you become so spiritually mature? And so that other people listening can say like, well, okay, you grow into this. You're not just born into this like incredibly godly husband leader, this incredibly godly woman leader in the home. Like, how did you become these people?
Oh man.
Well, you're too kind. Ashley is all that. Ashley is everything.
No, you are all that. But no, I mean, we have our really good days where we're doing this really well, and other days where we're not. And it's really a journey. I think as far as like maturity, spiritual maturity, it's been a process. I mean, Dave, became a Christian at 8 years old. I did at 12 years old, and just having a love for the Lord and going into the Bible and just, being involved in a church community and growing spiritually has really helped us. So like when we met each other in college, we both knew that, we were both Christians and we wanted to live out our faith. Now, we didn't do it perfectly. We've definitely had times.
I did so much stupid stuff,
man,
like reckless stuff,
me too.
In those late teen, young adult years. And I'm just so thankful for God's grace, and thankful that by the time we did find each other, like, I was on this path of like, I want to live for the Lord.
Yes.
Anything else I've tried has not worked, and I want to live for the Lord. And Ashley, I feel like Ashley and Jesus just are the heroes of my life story. They really are. They both are.
Mine too. Also, mine.
Yeah, right. And then Nirup is number 3 for me, and then it's like Billy Graham, and then it's like but it's just we're growing every day, and I think like maturity is But it's just like wisdom. It's a lifelong process that anybody can have, but we never arrive ever.
Right.
And I think a big part of just having any level of it, whether it's wisdom or maturity, is just recognizing I'm never going to arrive. I'm never going to hold a candle to Jesus. Thankfully, he's already done all the work and I can just rest in that, but I still want to become everything he created me to be and just have gratitude for what he's given us. And some days, like Ashley said, I'm really good at that. Some days I'm really bad at that. And I'm in the express line at Kroger and it's, 10 items or less. And the lady in front of me has 13 items. And I'm like, praying down fire on her and hoping that her car breaks down in the parking lot.
She went in the 10 or less.
Yeah.
No, I think we try to hold each other accountable. I mean, that's one of the most beautiful gifts in marriage is that you have, when you're both walking with the Lord, you can hold each other accountable in a really loving way. But I'm telling you, probably the single greatest gift we had right out of the gate early in our marriage were the people we surrounded ourselves with. And that was another thing mentors told us about is like, you become like the 5 people you hang around with the most. And right out of the gate, I remember we were trying to get involved at my home church, which had become your home church. Like it's the church where I became a Christian and later Dave had attended with his family. And for whatever reason, we weren't finding places to plug in. It was like emails wouldn't get answered and calls wouldn't be.
Are you talking about, Ashley, are you talking about like friends your own age, or you were trying to find people in different seasons of marriage?
I'm talking about at this point, friends our own age, like because we were the first of our friends to get married, but we were like, we know we're not aliens out here. Like there's bound to be somebody else who's similar to us that we can like lock arms with and do life. And so we ended up finding a church in a different part of town. They were in desperate need of people to help build this youth ministry. And we were like, well, we have time, and we want to just put our hearts and souls into this. And that time became some of the sweetest time. I mean, we grew so much in that. And it wasn't, I'm glad you asked that question, Nirup, because we did have people who were, our peers, same age, been married the same length of time. But in that group, we called it Lighthouse. There were people who were about 10 years ahead of us who had small children, and we got to learn from them and watch their marriage. And then there were these youth, looking up to us in how marriage should be. In fact, the very first time, I feel like it was like a little God wink of us even thinking about marriage ministry were some kids, we were talking about relationships and somebody raised their hand and said, I want to have a marriage like Dave and Ashley one day. And honestly, at that time, we'd been married 2 years. We're in the thick of all this stuff with in-laws and depression and all this. And we're thinking, why would you want to mimic our marriage? We feel like we're just hanging on here. But it just gave us that view of having, it's so good to have people ahead of you that you can look up to, people locking arms with you in the same season, and then people you're pouring into, because it really does something to edify you and keep you on your toes. And I'm telling you, in every season of life, in all these moves, one of the first things we do is establish those friendships and mentorships, because it's such a lifeline, because life is hard and you just never know what's going to come your way. And having believers ahead of you and side by side, and then also who are coming up behind you, it's just a beautiful way that the body of Christ works.
Yeah. So talk to us about that for a second, because our community is so young.
Yes.
Yes. How did you find those couples? Was it you're standing in the lobby and you're just saying, hey, we're young, we're dumb, someone please come talk to us? Or were you how did you find these people? Or did you expect the church to do all that work for you?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Yeah, that is a great question.
Yeah.
I feel like as a culture, I feel like right now as a culture, one of the weaknesses that I perceive right now is culturally is that we have this mindset that we can only learn from people who are our exact age and our exact season. We can so specialize knowledge, through TikTok, through wherever we're looking to find voices that sound just like ours, and look to those people and create a little insulated bubble for ourselves that's not representative of the world or the body of Christ or the multi-generations, and to stay in that little bubble because it feels safe and it feels like, okay, life makes sense here.
It's comfortable.
I can learn, but I don't have to really get stretched. And I feel like by God's design, we have to, like Ashley just said, we have to have those people we're locked arms with who are our peers and in the same season of life, but always looking ahead to mentors and then reaching down to those who are coming up after us. And so for a young community like yours, first off, I think it's amazing and awesome, that
awesome.
LifeGate is doing what it's doing to reach young people in a city that, where most people don't go to church, especially young people aren't valuing a relationship with the Lord like they should. And LifeGate is creating this culture of vibrant worship that's so authentic. And I love being there. I'm not cool enough to be there when I'm there. I'm like the least cool person here, but I love it.
I'm not cool enough to be here. That's for sure.
Oh,
Well, and you're 1,000 times cooler than me. Like, I mean, so I'm, but I love being there. I love the authenticity of it. And you're an amazing, you and Hannah have done such a great job shepherding that whole community. None of that has answered your question yet. So I would say, when you're surrounded by people who are just primarily your age, that's fine, but you have to be intentional at work, in your family, in those places where there are others, to just kind of lean in and really listen. I think, we kind of shun elders to a certain extent in our culture, because it's like, oh, if you're not like, young and cool like me, then I don't want to listen to you. But just listening, pulling up to that older man or woman at your office and leaning in and just letting them talk about life, or letting them talk about what they've learned about the job, and listening and asking them questions. I mean, people are honored. Do you think, oh, they're too busy? No, people are honored to share what they've learned. And then look for those who are younger than you that you can teach something. That can be through volunteering at children's or youth ministry. That can be in less formal ways, but it's very enriching to have all that going on.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love, and Haley, you can jump in anytime you have a question too. But so a lot of people would say, oh no, our closest mentors who we learn from is our parents. That's where our best examples are. So you both come from families that in many ways had a lot of health, but also in many ways had some unhealth, and some, as my brother likes to say, our parents, we put the fun in dysfunction. So how did you begin to kind of experience, like, okay, maybe there's some expectations here from our in-laws that aren't quite really what the Lord desires for us, or unhealthy in certain ways? And you talk about boundaries a little bit. So how did that play out? And how would you encourage couples right now who are in the thick of that, of in-law expectations, family expectations, and not recognizing that this new, what's really interesting is, a lot of people don't consider themselves a family until they have kids.
I know.
I don't know if you guys bring so I shared a story at church on Sunday. Hannah and I are in counseling. Things are not going well. So we go to see a counselor. And one of our first assignments was draw a picture of your family. So Hannah draws me and her. I draw my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, and myself.
Interesting.
And the counselor goes, great picture. Only one problem. Where's your wife?
Where's Hannah? Oh my God.
I'm like, what are you talking about? This is my family. He's like, no, this is your family. And he points at Hannah. And this kind of, this thing is moving in my mind, like, oh, this is what it means. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast, and this is a new family. So I think a lot of people have that. Until I have kids, we're not a family. So what was that like for you guys? What were those expectations? You wrote a book about this. That takes a lot of courage, because your in-laws are still alive. I mean, they can read this. So
I know.
They have. I mean,
we did change our address and unlisted number, but
no. I mean, this was probably the hardest book to write, because we had to go back down memory lane of what it was like in the thick of all that. Because we talked about the first 5 years of marriage, but honestly, the in-law struggles were really hard for probably about 10 years. I mean, to be honest with you,
it was brutal.
It was brutal.
I mean, can't get into like full detail, but just to say, like, it was exhausting. It was all consuming. It was just choking the life out of us for a lot of reasons.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah, we were overwhelmed by it.
And like in Married Into the Family, which is the title of the book we wrote, we tell the entire story using different names. We won't even tell you which names we chose. There's a lot of different stories in there where you'll see yourself in it.
So Dale and Ansley could be anybody.
That is not name. But let me tell you, it was like the hardest book to write, but it was also very cathartic in the sense of seeing how far God has taken us. Because just in short, very quickly, from like I said, literally from the wedding day, it was just so clear that there were some very specific expectations from some of our family members that were put on us that we would never be able to fulfill. And there were some codependent relationships. Again, I'm not going to name names out of respect for the parties who are very much alive. But, there was a codependent relationship that had been not, nobody knew about it because for
Okay,
generations.
define that for us for a second. Define codependent. What is a
Okay.
codependent relationship?
Codependent is where it's kind of this symbiotic relationship where you are both like living off of each other in like a very unhealthy way. And so if it was a parent-child relationship, it's like, for example, the mother has put all of her hopes and dreams and everything into her daughter, and she's maybe even living through her daughter, and the control she has over her daughter gives her life, and the daughter pleasing her mother gives her life. And if they don't have that, they don't know how to live. And so you throw
Your
marriage
very
in there,
identity is wrapped up.
very much.
Yeah.
I mean, both of you.
And it becomes an idol. It
is an idol.
It supersedes marriage. It supersedes even your relationship with God when you get in the depths of that kind of unhealthy relationship, when you're looking to another human being
Right.
to fulfill those soul level purposes.
Exactly. And so when it's undiagnosed, I say undiagnosed, like, or unrecognized, that's all you know. And like in a lot of families with codependent relationships, you can look back and for generations, there's been this codependency. And so the reason why it goes unrecognized for so long is because, well, that's how we do it in our family.
Yeah.
Like I know in our case, it was like, why are you doing this? In our family, it goes this way. You never challenge the matriarch, or you never do that. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
And it
yeah.
was like, so you become enemy number one. I mean, you are.
So what's a light bulb to say, hey, I think this is a codependent? Like what would be a litmus test or a marker that would say this could potentially be a codependent relationship you have with a parent?
If the thought of letting down that parent makes you physically ill,
Wow.
that's a codependent relationship.
As an adult.
As an adult, right.
As an
I'm
adult,
not talking about just being on your best behavior. I mean, like the thought of letting them down and then having to confront them about something makes you want to just run and hide and like have anxiety. There's something wrong there. We should be able to say no as an adult to our parents,
Right.
out of respect and out of love. And like, when you can't, I mean, I remember being in counseling and a counselor gave me a book called Emotionally Destructive Relationships. And that was a light bulb moment for me. So if anybody thinks they might be struggling with this, there's a book on that. There's also a new book, that book you've told me about. What was it called? Very popular.
Yeah, it's the book is called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents.
Yes.
And
that is a title.
That is a title.
But it captures it. It captures it. And so many people have found solidarity in it.
But because a lot of folks grew up in that, or maybe you're still in that, and
a lot of times they're codependent relationships.
Yeah. Because
I imagine the pressure for this goes up, because you said 10 years, so you have kids. So I imagine the pressure goes up when you are now this parent, this new parent who's also a child, is trying to please their parents by how they raise this child. So I imagine that pressure is just going to skyrocket.
Well, and that's what happens if you don't have those boundaries, because you're right. It just becomes this compounding problem. And like, thank God, Dave was so patient during that time. Like I just think about, like, we have to be really patient with each other when there's all these family relationships involved, because the goal is not to cut off your family. There are in all the work that we've done over the years, and even in our own experience, there are very, very few circumstances that warrant a completely cutting ties with family member, because it's not God's heart. God's heart is to have multi-generational families that love each other, that can help each other and lean on each other and have this legacy. And that was our heart. And that's our family's heart. Like, actually becoming a mom really helped us, like becoming parents really helped us to kind of see things a little differently. Not that it changed our standards or our boundaries, but it did give us compassion for parents who are maybe grabbing too much power and, wanting control. It kind of gives you that new perspective. But I'm telling you, the biggest thing that helped us was establishing healthy boundaries as our family unit. Like what you were saying, Nirup, is recognizing like we are a new family. It doesn't mean like we don't love our families. We're still part of our families, but we are a new family unit. And we have, some of the ways that might be similar to our families, but also God's called us to new ways that might be different from our families. And then we have to set together in unity those healthy boundaries. And I just want to say to those who are having, like their parents are the ones causing the unrest, I would just encourage you, when you set those boundaries, you need to be the mouthpiece of that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Don't make your spouse do it, because they're going to hold it against your spouse. But they might be mad at you in the short term, because usually if they've had a lot of control over your life and all of a sudden they don't, of course they're going to not like it. Of course they're going to give resistance. But you holding tight to it as their son or daughter, I'm telling you, they will come around to it in time. because they love you. It may take a while. I mean, for us, it took a while, but in time they did come around. And I'm just, 22 years later, I want to tell you, we have wonderful relationships with both sides of our family. It's not perfect. We all step on each other's toes a time or two every year, but it's beautiful. And we go on vacations. We actually enjoy each other.
Yeah, which is a miracle.
I mean, it's a miracle.
20 years ago, if
Yeah.
you told me that was going to happen, I'd have been like, no.
No
I
way.
mean,
Yeah.
like, there's no way.
Like
Yeah.
this is too far gone. You know?
My hope was just that we could just tolerate each other,
Mhm.
honestly. And
Wow.
and God had something so much better. He never just wants us tolerance is the world's language. God never
Mhm.
wants us to settle for anything less than love.
Yeah.
And real love, it requires, it requires some work.
Yeah.
And it did, but we're to a place now where we really do enjoy each other, and that's God working in all of our hearts.
Yes. Yes.
And also these boundaries, establishing healthy boundaries and sticking to them even when it got difficult. But ultimately, when you commit to doing things God's way, even if it hurts at first because you're having to undo some things that were unhealthy, it's always going to lead to something healthier in the long run.
Yeah.
That's really good. Okay, so we'll put the link for the book in the bio. People can buy the book, and all the profits go to feeding hungry kids. Your 4 kids,
Our
great
4
feeding
boys.
them. But really, kind of practical. Someone is struggling with their in-laws. What are some practical things to do? Just maybe one or two practical things. And then I really love what you said, Ashley. You said that child in the marriage has to be the one to lovingly confront.
Yep.
How does a husband step outside of that when he feels like it's his role to protect his wife and say, no, I need to step into this? So how is it actually loving and leadership to encourage your wife to say, hey, this is a conversation I think you need to have? So a couple practical things around that.
Yeah.
What would you say?
It's a great question. I mean, thinking back, like I would say this, like I mean, we were instructed on this about the person whose parents are the ones creating the chaos need to be the mouthpiece for it. So kind of, we didn't come up with that, but it does work. And it just, in the way families work, they're much more forgiving with their actual child than the one who married into the family. But I will say this, I remember there was one time when, I mean, I'll just be honest about this. So it was my family in this one time where there were some issues. And I believe that one of the family members really spoke harshly to me. And Dave, as my husband, did stand up and he said, whoa, please don't talk about my wife that way. So like there is a place for that. And he said it in a very loving way. It wasn't like, you don't, I mean, do you remember this?
Yeah,
I mean,
and I do think that
there's a
there are
place
those
for that.
times when you have to,
Yeah.
as the spouse, protect your spouse, because like that's our first loyalty by God's design. Like you
Right.
said at the beginning, like it's a new family. It's the most important family by God's covenant. The moment you leave your father and mother, you're joined to your wife. The two become one, and then that new family is the most important human relationship on earth you'll ever have.
Mm-hmm.
So it's God first, then your spouse, then kids, and then parents, and all the way down the list. And so if someone is attacking our spouse, even if it's a close relative of ours or theirs, we still have a responsibility at that point to step in and say, well, this is way out of bounds.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, just to create healthy conversation.
Can I ask a follow-up question on it? What would you say are the criteria of that, right? When is it appropriate for a spouse to step in and ask and like intercede on behalf of their spouse, right?
So I think, kind of to answer the question before, if you're setting a boundary, the mouthpiece is the spouse whose parents you're setting the boundary with. But if you're in that conversation of setting boundaries together, because hopefully, even though you're the one telling your parents, have your spouse be there with you. And that's kind of what the case of what was happening with us, is we were having a conversation about something that had happened and setting a new boundary. And this family member was just not having it. They were very used to getting control, and they started escalating, and they started kind of name calling. And so I think if there's name calling, if there's yelling, if there's, heaven forbid, any kind of physical, like, it feels dangerous, that's when your spouse needs to step in and say, hold on a minute, this isn't healthy. There's been times where, I know one of our big roles, you were talking about boundaries, Nirup, one of the big boundaries we had was that our parents can't call our spouse names, regardless if it's in person, on the phone, to us privately, whatever, because it's out of bounds. Not only because it's rude to them, but it also puts negative things in our mind as their spouse. Yeah. And it's just it's off limits. And so that was a hard boundary we kept. But there was this one thing where, parents who are used to getting control will sometimes be manipulative and talking badly about the spouse. And that was happening in our family. And so it took me in the phone conversations when that would start to happen, when that family member wasn't getting their way and started saying things like trying to make Dave look bad, I would say, listen, we've talked about this. You can't talk about him that way. And plus it's not even true. I mean, my goodness. And if you continue doing this, we're going to have to end this phone conversation. I don't want to. I'd rather continue and talk to you. I love you. But because I love you and because I love my spouse, I can't let you keep on saying this. And I remember the first time I did that, which I felt sick the whole time, because again, I'm like a pleaser by nature. I was in this codependent relationship. It felt very off to me because it was just so foreign to how we did things in my family. Yeah. But I did it with Dave beside me. Sometimes he wouldn't be, but knowing like I'm doing this for my marriage. And I remember there were times I had to hang up the phone, and I would warn them multiple times, but I would not slam it, not like I'm done with you or anything like that. I always tried to be extremely kind and not match their intensity. Like if they're going high, I'm still going at a normal volume. I'm still using kind words. I'm not going to cuss back at them or swear or, whatever they say in Colorado. But I'm not going to use harsh words, back at them. But I remember there were several times I had to hang up the phone, and I went home and I'd be like sick about it. But let me tell you, it happened less and less because that parent understood she means it. I'm not going to be able to have the kind of relationship I want with my daughter if I don't respect these boundaries. Yeah. And it never, like these days, that never happens. Never happens.
There's a parenting principle from, I think, Dr. Dobson back in the day, where he said rewarded behavior is repeated behavior.
Yes.
And he was talking about that with kids. Like if a kid throws a fit and you give them what they want, then they're going to keep throwing fits. Mm-hmm. But you never outgrow that rewarded behavior is repeated behavior. And if there's someone that's bullying in the family, I mean, no matter what age they are, if they're used to getting what they want through manipulation or through bullying or name calling or just through their emotions or through volume or intimidation, whatever it is, they're going to keep doing those things until they stop getting what they want through those unhealthy ways. And so that's one of the boundaries. You're saying, look, this is unhealthy. It was unhealthy of me to give into that for so long, thinking that was what being a peacemaker was. And that's not being a peacemaker. That's being an enabler.
Yeah, and a doormat.
And so we can't do that anymore. And so from now on, I'm not going to talk to you that way. But if you talk to my spouse or me that way, then we're going to have to just leave until you can calm down. We're just not going to be part of it. To protect our own marriage and mental health, we're going to step out. And then you got to follow through on that. And eventually,
which is hard.
That person is going to realize, oh, that tactic doesn't work anymore. Mm-hmm. And maybe they'll even realize that was really manipulative from the start. Right. It shouldn't be that way, but
yeah, it helps.
This is fascinating. Yeah. You wrote a book about this because you obviously, it's your own life experience. Of the couples you meet with and you speak to, how much of you say, rough percentage, X percentage definitely has some version of in-law unhealth or familial unhealth?
What would you think?
I would say, like, every family is so unique. Every family culture is so unique. What is normal and healthy to one person looks just so bizarre to somebody else. Yeah. But if I had to break it up into percentages, I would say it's like 25% of 25, 50. And here's what I mean by that. 25% of people have, like, for the most part, a really healthy, thriving relationship with both sides of the family. Okay. 25% have a really toxic, broken relationship with at least one side of the family. And I think that there are like 50% in the middle that they kind of make things work, but there's stuff happening below the surface that's not healthy, that they just kind of don't really know how to deal with or want to deal with. And so they just live that way, thinking, convincing themselves that that's the way that they have to live, but it can be better.
Yeah. So how much of this is fascinating to me. How much of this do you think is actual, they really don't like this person that I chose to marry, versus you could be married to Jesus or Mother Teresa. It wouldn't matter. Yeah. They would just not like the person.
Oh, I think you hit the nail. I think for most, not all, there's probably some unique situations. And it could be they wished you had married the previous boyfriend or the previous girl. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes there's attachments. I've seen that happen, which is just really, really so sad for the spouse, you know. But no, I think a lot of times.
My mom, she hates me. So we need to move on. She doesn't like me anymore. And my mom was like, who would not like my second born? Like, he's the best.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm telling you, like I think a lot of times it's exactly what you said, Nirup, where it doesn't matter who that person is. It's just the structures within the family are very much, it's hard to join that family. And I will say this, where I see it, in a lot of situations, control is at the center, whether it's from the mother or the father, or even like the sister or brother. I mean, you just never know the family makeup. But when this new person comes in, if they're not a pleaser and maybe their family's strong and they don't need that family as much, but they're still there nonetheless, they don't like that because they're like, I can't control you. I'm used to controlling people, and they don't like it when somebody comes in and they're not their puppet. And so, and that sounds really harsh for me to say that, but I see it over and over and over again. And that's why it's just so important to set those boundaries earlier rather than later. And that's, I mean, I don't like live with regret, but if I had to do it over again, I wish Dave and I in our premarital would have really talked about this more, because I think we would have gotten a grip on it sooner, and it wouldn't have maybe sent me, I mean, part of my anxiety and depression was, surrounding this issue. I'm not saying it's the whole of it, but it did have a lot to do with it. And I think I just kind of wonder sometimes, like, if we had had some tools out of the gate, it would have been helpful.
Yeah. So to talk about real quick, encouragement for couples who are engaged, who spend obscene amounts of money for their wedding on the venue and the photographs and the doves being released and the 21 gun salute and all that stuff. But then they want to go cheap on the premarital counseling. So what would be your advice to engaged couples? If you were like, here's 3 marriage axioms off the top of your head for engaged couples or just newly married, what would you say?
Yeah, that's a great question. The wedding is awesome. Have a fun wedding. Jesus did his first miracle at a wedding. Like, weddings are great, but I'm totally with you that if all of your planning is about a one-day event, then you're missing the mark on the lifetime event that's going to follow after it. And so work to build a foundation. And I think a lot of couples naively think they don't need to. It's like, no, we love each other. We're going to get through anything just because we love each other, and that's all that we need. And they don't really have a true understanding of what love is. That they truly have feelings for each other. They're committed to each other, all of that. But real love is gonna weather a lot of storms, and you need to get roots down deep right at the beginning and build your foundation for the house that God wants to build your life on. And that takes intentionality. You don't have to spend a fortune, but it does take work. I mean, I would say, read books, talk together, listen to podcasts. We have a pre-marriage podcast with XO that's totally free, and it's basically a full pre-marriage program that we put out in podcast form, just as a free resource for folks that might not be able to connect and go through all of that with a counselor or a pastor at their church. And so there's stuff out there, but you've got to take the time to do it. Because if it's all about the wedding, and then all of a sudden that wedding day's over and you're married and you look at each other and realize, well, we've never really done the work to figure out what being married means or what it looks like, then you're setting yourselves up for problems that you don't have to have.
Yeah. And I would say too, you talked about some marital axioms. I mean, the biggest thing is, don't underestimate the power of healthy communication. I'm telling you, most marital problems are not even the problem itself, it's communication. Like, you may think it's about sex, but no, it's communication. Or you may think it's about your in-laws, but no, it's communication. And so it's really, really foundational. And I think getting a lot of information, whether it be from your pastoral counseling that you get for premarital, would really be helpful. Talking through situations to learn how to communicate and what your communication styles are, and what your tendencies are and how you can get on the same page is so key. But I also think, again, coming back to kind of one way to really make your marriage strong is very early on, maybe even in this engagement season, try to find mentors. Like, find mentors, find friends that are in your same season of life, and even people you can pour into, because it is something that it just makes it really keeps you on your toes in your marriage, and it makes such a difference in how you think about your marriage.
Yeah, I love that you said mentors and not mentor, because you need a constellation of voices around you that have the same vision, same values, the love for the Lord. And I think what you've kind of hinted at several times is they don't have a dog in the fight other than they love you both.
Exactly.
No agenda.
No agenda other than they love you. and they want
Right.
the best for you and want God's best
Right.
for you. So definitely speak to that. Now, just really quickly, kind of wrapping up, we could talk to you guys for hours. You're so incredibly. I think the reason I love hanging out with you guys when we're on tour stops together is you are the same off stage as you are on stage, but you're incredibly wise. You love each other. You love the Lord. And so my last question, or kind of question in this area, is how do you approach marriage? Because everything we talked about could be taken in a humanistic sense, right? Go see a counselor, go set up boundaries,
Sure.
share your feelings, and it could be humanistic. But I know both of you love the Lord, you love prayer.
Yes.
So what are some biblical ways to actually pursue healthy dating, healthy engagement, healthy marriage, healthy conflict? What are the biblical ways in which married couples, single people can approach this?
I love that question. I mean, I would say number one, and I know Dave will have a lot more amazing, wise things to say about this, but I mean, number one, you've got to be in prayer and you've got to be in the word. I mean, just taking that personal responsibility of really doing your spiritual disciplines, being part of a church family, be part of a small group, just keep growing in your own walk with the Lord. Especially when you're in that dating and even in engagement season, because you're setting kind of the groundwork that is going to take you into marriage. And
Yeah.
I think I'm like, don't sleep on that. Like, don't wait on it. Don't do it now so that you're, spiritually healthy, emotionally healthy, mentally healthy, and in a really good place. And I feel like too, when you're doing that and pursuing the Lord, you have kind of the mind and heart to pursue the right person and that wisdom of, is this person someone I potentially could spend my life with? Because they might be a fine person. And like from humanistic terms, like you said, Nirup, but when we're in the word and we're really praying and really listening to the Lord, he's going to reveal things to us, that we'll know that we wouldn't know otherwise if we're not in that relationship. That's what I would say. What would you say, sweetie?
Yeah, I mean, it's so good. It really does come down to those things. Be in the word, be in prayer. God's going to speak to you, not through your horoscope and not through, not through just the stars aligning, but he's going to speak to you through his word every time you open it up, because it's alive and active. And specifically within it, something that helped me as a young man was I would read the book of Proverbs like over and over. In addition to everything else I was reading in the Bible, I kept coming back to it, because it was just so full of wisdom. What does wisdom look like? What would wisdom do in this situation? God's wisdom, not man's wisdom, but God's wisdom of how to think and how to react and how to pursue relationships. And it took me reading it over and over for it to really start getting lodged in my brain, where I was internalizing it and living it. And so I think that's a good place to start for somebody who's like, well, I want to read the Bible, but I don't know where to start. I mean, read the Proverbs, read the Gospels, read the stories of Jesus and his teachings, and let it sink in, and surround yourself with people who are on that same journey, who want to know the Lord. Get in community of people that love Jesus, and it's going to make a big difference.
Yeah. Okay. You guys are so wise. I'd love for people to follow you. What are the ways that people can just follow you, continue to listen to what you're putting out there? What are the channels? And then what's your physical address so we can all swing by?
Totally. Yeah. Social security number.
All the things. Yeah. Well, probably, I guess where you can really reach us most regularly is probably Instagram. It's just at Dave and Ashley Willis. I spell Ashley Ashley. No fun spelling for me, just the original. And also at daveandashleywillis.com. It's going to show you all of our articles, where we're going to be speaking live next. And we hope you can come out to one of our XO marriage conferences, and you'll see us and Nirup.
Yeah, we miss you,
so much fun.
The tour is not as fun when you're sick or somewhere else. And so
it's not.
I turned 40 and my body got frail. I can't go to Taco Bell anymore. It's like a 3-week recovery process now.
So we were just talking about this the other day. It's true.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you, my friend. And you'll be coming to our church here in Augusta.
I know, we can't wait.
You're so excited.
Our
folks. I'm going to try to sneak on the Masters golf course like I tried last time. But last time the old security guard caught me. But I had Hannah with me, and she's a rule follower. I was like, Hannah, we can make it. But she's the rule follower.
Just run.
That old guy's not going to be able to catch us. He was like Happy Gilmore old. I mean, he was like, there's no way that guy's catching us. Okay, last question. How many books have you guys written?
Gosh, I want to say like 17 together.
Well, it's not as impressive.
His and hers.
A lot of them is like one book, And then that book got turned into like a his and hers devotional. And then that 2-book his and hers devotional got like updated into a separate his. So like that one book is like 5 books.
Well, not really, but sort
but
of.
yeah,
I mean,
there's
17. That's impressive. I don't think I've written 17 emails in my life. That's impressive.
That's probably
That's
true.
impressive. Do you have another book coming out soon? Like or you're thinking about it? Well,
Probably. I mean, we will be working on something. We
Yeah.
have some stuff in the works. Actually, we're going to be writing something more in the parenting space pretty soon, and so we're excited about that.
Yeah, should be fun. And we're going to do our first ever parenting conference sometime this year.
Yes.
So that's in the works too. So that'll be fun.
Excited.
well, thank you for sharing your voices, your wisdom with our community. We're going to make sure that people follow you guys, get your books and your content because it's so rich, it's so biblical, it's so wise. And you both do have an incredible marriage, not perfect, but I think you both resemble two imperfect people walking with a perfect God. And the Lord is perfecting you both inside of that. So we love you guys and we can't wait to have you again. I mean, you guys did the marriage conference and people were like, when are they coming back? Are they moving here? Are they going to?
Anytime.
We loved it.
We love it.
You invite us, we'll come. We had a ball. At LifeGate. And any chance to hang out with you and Hannah.
True.
And you too, Haley, of course.
Yes.
I'm still here.
It was
We're going to have you guys back for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love it.
We would love to be back. So just
All right, y'all.
Well,
thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Guys.
All right.